Hi. So today on the podcast, I'm speaking to Daniel Pohl. Daniel is the founder of No Ramble, the brand and packaging design studio that helps brands become more distinct and memorable by going against their category cliches. So Daniel and I had a great conversation about packaging. I know we've spoken about packaging on the podcast before, but this was a really different conversation because Daniel has an agency who really believes that to stand out, you need to go against what everyone else is doing in your packaging category rather than conform. And we had a really great conversation with lots of examples of brands who are doing really different things, how they're doing it, why they're doing it, and the benefits of having a product that really stands out on the shelf, whether that's in an actual store, whether that's on your website, or whether that's on Amazon. This was a really interesting conversation. There's lots of practical advice in here too, as always, and I would love now to introduce you to Daniel. Hi, Daniel. Thank you so much for being here.
Morning, how are you?
Really good, thank you. Really excited to talk to you. So, I would love it if you could please start by giving us an introduction to yourself, your business, and what it is that you do.
Yeah, fab. So I'm Daniel, founder of No Ramble, which is a brand and packaging design studio in up north in Manchester. Um, our main USP is kind of working with brands to kind of look at their category and kind of go away from their category cliches. So brands that we look up to are brands like Surreal Cereal, Graza, all those sorts of brands that kind of really stick it to their category and do things a little bit differently. Um, And our process kind of goes with that as well. Like we have a bit of a strange process that kind of goes through that. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you. When we spoke the first time before we were recording, I was really interested when you spoke about rebelling against these category
Yeah.
cliches we see in packaging. I would love to know what are some of the common packaging cliches you see, and why do you think brands fall into them? I know
Oof.
that's quite a
I
big
think the
one to
most
start you
common,
off with.
yeah, it's a tough one as well because I think it's so subjective to the category that they're in. Like the cliches that you see are so different to from like food and bev to like beauty. Like it differs. And that's kind of the beauty of each category is that they all have their own cliches. And we always find it interesting when we work with clients from different markets figuring out what the cliches are in that market. Um, for example, like, I mean, to be fair, like, I think cliches in general at the minute are kind of whatever's trending. So it seems to be whatever big brands out there at the minute that's scaling TikTok or Instagram, that tends to be a cliche that kind of moves into different categories. But it tends to be that each category has their own cliches. So, for example, like, I'm sure I'll bang on about it in this call, but um, like the olive oil aisle, like they're all transparent bottles with tiny little labels and green caps or gold caps. So they all look the same. Do you know what I mean? But then Graza comes along and do things completely differently. And then the cliches then change because they end up looking like Graza and people start bringing out visuals that look like Graza because that's what seems to work for people. Um, but yeah, I think that's the most common thing is it just seems to be what's ever trending um, in that cliche, in that category, sorry. Um, but it's a revolving wheel. Like it never seems to stop, which is the beauty of it as well.
I think I know what you mean because I think if you go down, say you go to the supermarket and you walk down the aisle, I generally
Yeah.
find that whatever aisle you're standing in, the products there will look pretty similar. So, like if you go to the kids' snack aisle, it's all like bright colours, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Or
yeah.
it seems to be at the moment.
Yeah.
Or like you say, if you go to the wine, it's all you know, they're all
Small
they all look
boxes,
much for
really.
muchness or like the fabric conditioner. Wherever you go, I know exactly what you mean. If you're wandering around an actual physical shop, any
Yeah.
area you go into, most of the products look pretty similar, but then you will get the ones that stand out because they don't look like the others. And is
Yeah,
that
they
what
go
you're aiming
yeah.
for?
Yeah, they go against it. So it's funny you talk about laundry detergent actually, because there's a new brand that's just come out that I found a couple of weeks ago called Eat Dirt. Um, and you walk down the laundry detergent aisle, it's all like big, curvy bottles that have all got like delicate flowers on them, and it looks really soft. And that's fine. Like some cliches, kind of you have to have because it's familiarity. So there's like a fine balance. Um, but Eat Dirt interestingly has this like crazy illustration of this woman on the side, like this huge woman that's like just a face, like it's like 80% of the whole tin. And it's basically like an oil tin. A bit like have you seen Engine Gin, that brand?
Yeah.
Yes, it's a similar capsule like that where it's like a square tin that's rounded. So it looks completely different. I've not seen it on shelf. I think it's just come out, but yeah, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. But I keep seeing it and I'm like, oh. yes, it's like this the sort of stuff that gets us out of bed in the morning.
I liked your example. You mentioned Surreal earlier as well, and that's a brand that I follow because I really like they just look so different to any other product in their category at the moment, I think. Um, and I just think it's really fun to stand out because it does genuinely get your attention, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It really does. And I think as well, like, I think that's something that people miss a lot of the time is that, like, the first thing in selling or packaging is attention. Without attention, you're not going anywhere because nothing else follows that. Like, you can't, somebody's not going to pick it up off the shelf without the attention first. And I think Surreal did a really good job of that. I know they rebranded since, but I really liked how the Surreal cereal packaging ended up in its first iteration just had like a, I think it was a breakdancing man on like a piece of chocolate for their cocoa hoops or whatever it was. They've redesigned now to have like a bowl of cereal on there. But when you saw that in co-op, like all the Kellogg cereals had all the bowls of cereal on them, and then there was this little blue box that had this breakdancing man. Like it just makes you look at it and think, "What's that?" And it's intriguing. Obviously, it's not, and as well, you've got to like balance it with the audience, right? Like if it's my mum that's buying it or my dad who are in the 60s, it's not going to appeal to them because they know what they like and they're not kind of they're quite brand proud. Um, but yeah, for the younger generation, which they're now getting more buying power, that sort of thing really helps and really makes people tick in a way. But yeah,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But with that in mind, so knowing that in lots of categories, a lot of products do look similar, why do you think so many brands do default to what everyone else is doing instead of trying to stand out? Is it sort of because
oh,
that's the
do
way
you know
it's
what?
always been done? Or, I mean, I know
Yeah,
this is only your
so
opinion, but I'm so interested.
yeah, it's. I mean, yeah, it's all subjective, isn't it? But I think, for my personal opinion, I think that it's more along the lines of that. What happens is brands or agencies or studios or founders of CPG brands will do research and go, right, I'm bringing out a skincare brand, for example. They'll then look at competitors because you'd be stupid not to, and then they'll go, all right, okay, they're all white and they've all got like opaque bottles and labels, and then in the intrinsic thought is that, oh, well, that must work. That must be what works. So we'll just do what they're doing and just take a tiny piece of the pie. And that's how brands end up looking the same. But then all that happens is the brand that you're copying, because there will have been a brand at some point that has set those cliches in stone. A bit like when we talked about Graza, like there's brands now coming out that look like Graza. But when Graza came out, they were so different to what was already out there. But now it's almost like they've re-established that cliche. So then what I'm saying now is that, brands and look at that, they bring out a new cool olive oil brand and go, "Oh, but Graza looks different, and that's what's working for them. So we'll just copy what they're doing because it's easier and it's almost proven." I think going against cliches is quite a ballsy thing to do, and it takes a lot of guts to do it. Um, I'm sure there was a boardroom meeting at some point at Graza where they were kind of like, "Oh, is this the right way to go? Should we do this?" Um, and as well, like I always think there was a quote that I saw years ago, and it still always sticks in my mind. I don't know how it goes exactly, but I think it was Henry Ford or Harrison Ford, maybe the guy that created Ford cars. I think at the time when he founded Ford, everything was still horse and car, and his quote was something along the lines of, "If we'd have asked at that point what consumers wanted, they'd have just said they wanted more horses or faster horses. Nobody would have said, 'Oh, we want cars with engines that have petrol in them and we fill them up with things.' That would never have been a thing." So sometimes it's about kind of going against the data per se and just doing what you think's right to get that attention, like you say. But yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it makes sense, and I understand why it's why so many brands do default because it's like you say, it's a really bold move because coming
yeah,
back to your skincare example, if you suddenly decide, I don't know, you're gonna put your skincare in neon packaging, yes, it
yeah,
will stand out, but you have to think a customer's going to be looking for that. Is that what they it's tricky, isn't it? Because if you're doing
yeah,
something that hasn't been done before, it's really hard to know, will customers respond to that? Will they pick it up off the shelf? So that's really tricky.
yeah. It is. It's a hard balance, I think, because like it's like you say, like the familiarity of brands and consumers, like there is a fine balance between it. And whenever we work with clients, we always say to them, like, there is a fine line between having something that's so differentiated that it gets the attention and the correct attention, but as well, you don't want to discriminate against the consumer's mind. Like, yes, the brain's wired to notice what's different, but if it's so different, like it kind of goes the opposite way. Um, and there's a famous case study, isn't there, of Tropicana that when they rebranded in, I think 2008, we see cases all the time of it where they changed so much on their packaging that the familiarity of it, it just ended up people just couldn't find it because there's queues specifically for Tropicana, not necessarily the orange juice category, but for Tropicana. It was the big orange with the straw coming out and the green text that kind of um, was in the shape of the orange essentially, and they got rid of all that. And then all of a sudden you're not familiar, so you're now lost and you've started from scratch again because all that equity is just gone. Um, so there are some cliches that you do have to lean into, but when we have to do that, um, we tend to try and reframe it in a different way. Um, whatever that looks like is obviously the process that we go down. But yeah,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think the other thing is that could be tricky is sometimes seen, and I wish I could think of an example where I have seen a product and I thought it was something else because of the way it was packaged.
yeah,
And that can be quite confusing as well. And I guess sometimes that can work and sometimes not. I would love to know a little bit
yeah.
more about your process. So, when you're designing packaging, where do you start? Is it the product? Is it the customer? Is where it's going to sit in the shelf? Is it the category? Like, how does that work?
So I mean, to be fair, it very much depends where the client's up to. A lot of the time, we get a client come to us and we go, "Oh, we've done all this market research, we've done all this consumer research, we've got all the data. We just need someone to help translate it." Um, but then at the same time, when they come to us, we kind of look at it in a different way. So where most studios kind of look at like the category and go, "Oh, that's how it is, so that's how we're gonna have to go." We look at it the opposite way of that. But I think we always start with the customer. You've always got to start with the customer because they're the ones that have obviously got the buying power. So it's trying to think what makes them tick, right? Like what's the buying motivation? Why are they buying orange juice? Why are they buying um, a prebiotic soda, for example? I think interestingly, um, I think it was Poppy, I think in America, that rebranded years and years ago. I don't think it was called Poppy. I think they rebranded to Poppy to what we know it as today. Um, but I think their whole USP was the fact that it was gut health and healthy for your intestines and healthy for your insides, and that was that wasn't the buying motivation of that consumer. The consumer that was buying that was buying it for the taste of the product, but the sub benefit was the fact that it was, oh, it's healthy as well. Great. Like this just increases the credibility of the product, and that's kind of how it is. So they flip their packaging, their branding to have those illustrations on the can of the fruit. Um, and that's where that rebrand came from, was that they realized that consumers were wanting to buy a tasty drink first and foremost, but then the added benefit is that the fact it's healthy for your gut. So I think always understanding your customer first before you do anything is key, really key. Because otherwise, I mean, it's just a guessing game at that point. Do you know what I mean? That's not, you don't want to get rolled into that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. I can see that starting with the customer and thinking about what they're looking for makes sense because, as you've
Yeah.
pointed out, there might be certain things you want to highlight on the packaging above others,
Yeah.
depending on your customer's motivations. That makes a lot of sense, and it's really
Yeah.
interesting that they rebranded when they found that out as well. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, because I don't know if everyone would have done that. I think that makes a lot of sense. So I'd love to know. So when we're talking about designing packaging that's going to go on a physical shelf, so let's say their idea is the product's going to go into stores or it's already on stores. What makes someone really notice a product, stop, perhaps pick it up, have a closer look? Are there any sort of key factors that have to go into your packaging if you want it to stand out?
Um, yeah, there is, but again, it goes back to the whole like it's subjective to the category, and like a good example of this is like the vodka aisle. Like, so I'm sure we all know AU vodka. Like when you look at the vodka aisle, it's all transparent bottles, clear liquid. Um, like it's almost always got like an illustration on it, and it's always red vodka. But then AU Vodka come along because they're like, right, we need people to stop, stare, look, get attention, pick it up, pick our bottle up. So they went with a whole gold bottle. Brilliant. Like, when you see it on the shelf, like it does capture your attention. Even I'm sure um, you, you'll know this, Vicky. Like in the UK, we have like what I call alcohol jail, where um, depending on where you are in the country and then what shop you're in, the bottles kind of sit in these like security tagged nets almost, which makes packaging work it has to work even harder. So in that sense, it's almost like if you take the vodka example and the alcohol example, in that instance, it's more about the shape of the bottle because your little label's not going to do much past the security tag and that net. Or it's the whole bottle color back to where you vodka, where it being gold. Um, but yeah, it's hard to kind of put like an actual stamp on that question and say, oh, it's this, because it just depends what the product is, what makes the customer tick, what the category is, what the category looks like, and what the buyer motivations of that category is. Um, but that's all strategy, right? And that's what would come out in that kind of process of trying to figure all that out before you started putting pen to paper with the ideas. But yeah,
That's brilliant, thank you. And how does that change when we move from like being in a physical store to being online? So let's take Amazon for example, because
yeah,
I work with Amazon sellers,
yeah, yeah.
and obviously on Amazon customers are scrolling rather than actually walking down an aisle. So is there anything we need to do differently then to stand out?
Yeah, to be fair though, I think Amazon's harder because in the sense that like when you walk down like an aisle in Tesco or Waitrose or whatever, you've kind of just got the products. So it's just the products fighting against each other. Whereas on Amazon, like I always think the Amazon web pages are so messy and so noisy. So you've not only got like the products fighting against each other, but you've got like like the navigation buttons, the menu buttons, the add to cart buttons, the discount buttons. Like there's so much more that goes into the Amazon web page than just an aisle. But we still class it as like a digital shelf, right? And it's similar with like if you go into Google and search like I don't know lemonade, like you're still going to get like a strip of at the top, like a strip of product images with like a bit of information at the bottom. And Amazon kind of works similarly, doesn't it? Where I think you've just got to be more clear with the creative direction approach. So it's almost like that hierarchy in the sense of right, what are the buyer motivations? What does everything else look like? Um, and then just making sure that those things are as clear as possible. We actually worked with a US skincare brand last year, and they were, I think, 90% of their business was on Amazon. Um, and that kind of reframed our process in the sense that right, this has to be a billboard essentially. This can't be like, oh, gold foiling and like embossing and all that sort of stuff because it's not going to matter at that point. That'll all create experience and retention later down the line. But for us to get to that point, we need to be really clear about what it is. So that I think the artwork ended up looking like it was like logo and then it was very much the benefit of the product. So it was skincare. So it was like, it would say something like 5% niacinamide serum and then there would be like a couple of other benefits at the bottom, and that was kind of it. It was really clear. There was like a couple of like flower illustrations on there, but first and foremost, it was just very clear in the USPs and the benefits and the brand, and then make sure that's consistent. So I think it's quite easy to create a bit of equity on Amazon if you're clever with it. You can kind of create if they were to search skincare in the US, if their brand came up now it's quite consistent, which is the reason they approached us was because it wasn't consistent and it was like one product was purple, one product was pink. They had no consistency, but if we always think about Amazon selling and Amazon packaging, it's got to be a billboard. It's got to be really clear because you're almost going to get less time to make that impact and um, make that impact with the consumer that's buying that category because it is, like I said, so much more messier than an actual real life shelf. It's a harder job, but yeah,
Oh, definitely much harder. And I really liked what you said about having like the product, the benefits like really highlighted on the packaging. And funny you say that. I've seen that in the skincare recently when I sometimes, look on Amazon, is that because often for that category you have to show the packaging. I've
yeah,
noticed a lot, might be a quite a big label, but the label will say the biggest bit on the label is basically what the product does, what the benefit does. Like you
yeah,
say,
yeah,
whether it's got a
yeah,
certain percentage of this specific ingredient or whatever. And I do think that is really smart because the image should be the thing that grabs you. I mean, yes, you
yeah.
have the title underneath, but actually the image and the title need to work well together. And I do think having the key information really clear on that main product image, therefore on your packaging, I think makes
Yeah.
so much sense.
Yeah, it does, and, like, I always said to them as well as a client, like, because like I mean I've used skincare for the past like 15 years, so I kind of know to an extent what like niacinamide and hyaluronic acid would do, but like to a shopper that's on Amazon that has, let's say, 3 seconds looking for what they're trying to look for, um, I always said to them, like, we need to flip the like an education piece. And instead of saying like, oh, 5% niacinamide, it's more about like, oh, this product will, you know, smooth fine lines or get rid of blackheads or whatever it might be. Um, it's almost like the benefit, and then the fact it's got 5% niacinamide is the credibility bit, and that's the bit that you've got to be really clear on. Um, because it's a bit like Apple years ago when they released the iPod. They they had a billboard somewhere around the world that said something like 1,000 songs in your pocket, as opposed to saying like 5 gigabytes of storage. It was 1,000 songs in your pocket because that was kind of the end benefit to the user. Um, so almost, I mean, and this is skincare just in like this problem is only in skincare and like personal care, where they talk about ingredients more than they talk about the benefit that the ingredient has. Um, but yeah, it's things like that where you got to be really clear, especially in Amazon, because like I said, it's just it can get so messy on there. And you've only got like a really tiny square as well, right? Like, do you know what I mean? It's mad.
Yeah.
It's great, but yeah,
It is, and that's why I really appreciate it when something says on it, brightening serum, blackhead
yeah,
remover,
yeah,
whatever it is. I really
yeah,
appreciate when something tells me exactly what it is, because you're right, I don't know enough to know what, like, the ingredients are, but I love it when a
yeah.
product just tells you this is what I am. And are there
Which is why I
any
want.
sort of packaging mistakes you see brands make, particularly on Amazon? We definitely
Yeah,
don't
a
have to call any
few.
brands out, but is there anything you see?
No, no, a few. Yeah, like obviously, I think a lot of people shop on Amazon now, and the most frustrating thing for me, especially being in this world as well, is like there's packaging fundamentals, right? That it has to answer, and it's what it is. Why should I care? I mean, they're the two main things that packaging should answer, and if you go back to the skincare thing, it's like okay, 5% niacinamide. What is it? Like, I get that it's niacinamide, but I'm not buying niacinamide. I'm buying whatever I need. I've got something wrong with me. Like I'm buying a product for a reason. I'm not buying niacinamide for the sake of buying niacinamide. Um, so that's one thing is just be very clear about what it is and make that crystal clear. And then why should I care? So why should I care is the credibility thing. And this will differ between generations and, you know, genders and whatever it might be, like the psychographics and the demographics, it's understanding why should the customer care? And that goes into two parts where it's like, why should they care about the product? But then why should they buy the product over the competitors? Um, and then that's when things can get distinct. And that's when from a buyer, it's like, how do things get distinct? And we always go through a process with our clients where we say, we put it through what we call the mum test, where we say something like, if we were to describe this product and this brand to our mum or someone that's not the audience for the product, without saying the brand name, and you were sending them to the shop to pick it up, or you were sending them to Amazon to come get it, how would you explain it? Um, and if we look at like Graza, for example, it's like, oh, I need some olive oil. Um, if you go to the shop, it's the one that's in the green squeezy bottle with the cream label and the green illustrations on the front. And I think it's got a red tip. Do you mean super distinct, super easy? When you go to the store, you're probably going to find it. Similar to Amazon, right? Like, oh, if you search on Amazon, like it's the one with the green squeezy bottle with the illustrations, blah blah blah. So it's kind of three things, isn't it, that people on Amazon struggle with. It's the what is it, why should they care, and is it distinct enough to remember to come back to? Because I think retention's like it's like a golden nugget. Like if you can keep a customer coming back, like it's like free. Like it's not cost you anything extra. Like, do you know what I mean? And it's so undervalued, so undervalued.
Definitely. And I also think another issue on Amazon when things all look the same is you can't remember what's what. So I was looking for something on Sunday night, and the category I was looking at is like in the arts and crafts category. And
Yeah,
everything I looked at, the main image looked pretty much identical. So
yeah,
I was then getting really confused because I wasn't saving any links. And then I was like, oh, I think actually the one I want was like the second one I looked at. That
yeah,
looked like
yeah.
the best
People love
one.
that.
Then I'm going back to the page and I'm like, I don't know which one that was because all of these images look so similar. I genuinely couldn't work out which one it was that I'd looked at and thought was the best one for me, because it
It's
was
crazy,
every
isn't it?
main picture looked the same, and I
Yeah,
think that's quite an extreme example, but I'm sure that happens in other categories as well, where if everything looks a bit too similar, you're not going to know which one it was that you were after,
no, exactly, exactly,
or you're not
and,
gonna remember if you wanna go and buy it again.
yeah, and that's the other caveat to that as well is that when you were saying, like, "Oh, you just couldn't remember which one was which," like, and this goes for both retail, online, Amazon, D2C, whatever it is, but when everything kinda looks the same, like, the the conscious mind goes, "Oh, well, it looks the same, so it must be the same thing." So in that case, I'll just go with whatever is cheapest, and this is how brands get locked into these, like, price wars of 10% off, 20% off, and they just kinda try and undercut each other because nothing's distinct. Where I guarantee, obviously Graza isn't in the UK, but I guarantee that Graza in the US probably commands a price premium against its competitors because like it's just so easily distinctive and people want that brand in their life because it is so different and it's what that brand says about them. So when you are different, it does feed into that whole price perception thing. Um, because like I said, like when everything looks the same, people think must be the same. So in that case, I'll just go with whatever's the cheapest or the most convenient. But on Amazon, it's everything's convenient, right? Because everything's on Prime or same day delivery, whatever it is. So yeah,
That is such a good point, and I hadn't actually thought about that one. Thank you. Yeah, that makes so much sense, and you're right, and that's exactly the process I was going through on Sunday. I was going genuinely. These are all much of a muchness. I'm going to find the one that's cheapest,
yeah,
basically.
exactly.
Yeah, and
That's just how that works,
uh,
right? Which is how, but once you can't figure out what the benefit is, your next buying decision tends to be, unless you buy like a Lamborghini, your next buying decision is that cost. Do you know what I mean? But yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. So, if someone is designing their packaging today and they know they're going to be selling online as well as in stores, what should they be thinking about from day one? What are some of the things to consider?
Um, I see. I think that designing for retail and designing for D2C is they are two completely different jobs. Like I think retail has a harder job to do essentially from a not almost like a communication perspective because the thing that Amazon has and retail has as like almost like on their side is the fact they do have a whole web page that kind of supports the product. Um, but that's only when you get to that web page. That's only when you click on that product, right? That you get those like slides of pictures that explain ingredients or how to use or the nutritional facts or the benefits, etc. Whereas kind of retail doesn't have that. It's kind of retail has to do all of that on like either a bottle or a label or a box or whatever it might be. Um, but I always come back to the whole thing of if you're designing something today, customers, competitors, what do customers want and how are competitors not dealing with that? They're the kind of two ways that we deal with it internally, where we think, right, what do the customers want? Like, why are they buying this product? And then we look at the competitors and think, right, well, what are the cliches? How are we going to go against them? What do we have to keep in the thing? Um, because there are some things that need to be kept in. Versus what can we kind of throw away and do something different with? But yeah, if someone's doing it for today for both retail and D2C and Amazon, like whatever your product or packaging going, always start with competitors and customers because they're the ones that are already going to give you the data and the insights. But yeah.
Thank you. You touched on this a little bit just a moment ago. Um, so do you? Well, but my question is around price perception, and do you think that having a really good design, a product that really stands out, can genuinely help a brand avoid competing on price?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. I just think that like because brands they all look the same and we see it in every category. We've talked about a few of them on here already. Um But it's proven that in psychology that the the brain is wired to find what's different in certain things, whether that be in cars or paintings or clothing or packaging or whatever it might be. Um, and when you can't notice difference instantly, your next buying conscious is that, "Oh, well, I'll just go for whatever's convenient." And then if everything's convenient, it's all there, it's, "Oh, well, then it's cost." But then obviously depending on the category and the person that's buying it, those buying motivations can flip. So it might be that somebody's going in just wanting the cheapest product anyway, um, when in that case, they'll probably just go with whatever's cheapest, and that doesn't really matter. Um, but for a lot of brands where they wanna command that price premium, the biggest thing of doing that is looking different and doing things a little bit differently. Like, I think, like, cereal's a good example of that. Like, I'm sure in, like, Co-op, near me, it's, like, £5 for a box of, like, and it's a much smaller box. I think it's, like, 300 grams or something, which is expensive for, like, cereal, but we buy it. Like, do you know what I mean? It's obviously selling. It's doing well. Like, I eat it. You know what I mean? Whereas versus, like, you've got all your Kellogg's products on the shelf that are all 9 times out of 10 on offer because they're, like, 2, 3 quid for a box of, like, double the double the cereal. It tends to be, like, 600 grams. Um but because they all look the same and everything looks similar, like, and then you look at cereal and go, "Oh, well, that's different. So it must offer something different," which is then backed up by the fact it does because it's protein-based, cereal. So there's that credibility there as well. Um, that yeah, it commands a price premium. Do you know what I mean? There's a reason people buy brands, isn't there? Like, and it's what it kinda says about you as well. Like, it's what and there's a reason we all have iPhones and Macs. It doesn't there's that quote as well from, like, years ago where it's like a Toyota and a Bentley get you to the same place at the same time, but it's the experience of getting there. It's very similar with, like, branding and packaging, like, I'm sure a Windows laptop and a Mac laptop do the same things, like, foundationally, but it's what me carrying a MacBook does and what it says about me. It's like, "Oh, I'm creative. I might be doing a bit better than whatever else." Like, to me, it builds your own brand image and your own personal image, and people will pay for that. People pay more for that sort of stuff. So, yeah, definitely, definitely.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, it's when you come, I know this isn't an area you'd be working when it comes to like clothes and what brands you wear and things like that. I think it does.
Yeah,
There are certain brands that do say something about you, don't they? Like you're making a statement. And as you said, brands that you shop with. So you might choose to shop with someone that's particularly eco friendly or so, or for example, because
yeah,
that says something about you as a person. So yeah, I totally get what you mean. I would love
yeah.
to know, Daniel, if someone's listening now and they think, I wonder if my packaging is good enough. I wonder if my packaging stands out. What are what are some questions they can ask themselves?
Um, questions they can ask themselves. I think I mean, this very much depends on where the brand is in their life cycle. Like, if they're just starting out and they can afford to kinda go against the grain a little bit, then it would always be, how can I differentiate my offering, in the market? Like, don't just look at the brand that's got the most equity and the most market share and go, "Well, I'll just do what they're doing because it obviously works." Because all you're gonna do is build equity for them. Like, and that's not a sustainable business or brand for anybody. Um, so if you're a startup and you've just started or you're in your first kind of 3 to 4 years and you can probably afford to, like, go against the grain a little bit. But for brands that are a little bit more well established, it's a very similar story where you're gonna have to look at the competitors and think, "Where does this actually sit?" Like, if I was and do you know, something we do actually do as well, which are very undervalued, very, very undervalued, um, is go to where your competitors are, take your product, go to where your competitors are, and just look at the shelf. Put your product in on the shelf, look at the shelf and go, "Do I stand out? In this busy supermarket or this busy Sephora, does my product stand out? If it doesn't, you're going no further than that because that attention's the currency of business, right? Like, if you got no attention, then nothing else follows that. Um, but yeah, I'd always just say, see where you fit within that market, and that'll kind of understand whether um, what improvements you could make. And as well, like, if you're really bold about it, doing that, which we've done in the past as well with some of our clients, is stand in the aisle a little bit and just watch how people shop that category. Like, are people just going, put it in their basket and walking off, or are they standing at the shelf and looking? Are they looking at different, what's on the back, what's on the sides? Because if they are, then that's an opportunity create more of an experience. But if they're just walking past and just throwing something in their basket, well, that's the sort of category that you need to really stand out in and really do things differently to capture that attention. Um, but yeah, does that make sense? Or
Yeah, I really like that. That's great advice. Thank you. And as you were talking, I was thinking you're right, and I'm sure there'll be different categories that people shop differently as
yeah,
well. So I think that would be fascinating to do. I quite want to do that. I want to stand in
yeah,
a shop and
it's
see how
interesting.
people
It's
see
so
what
interesting
people
because
do.
yeah, you'll find so much like little because it's the sort of data that like doesn't lie, and it can't be like pigeonholed either. Like there's nobody at the in a room going, "Would you buy this?" And then because people are going to go, "Oh yeah, I'll buy it." Like watching people in the store and on aisles, um, it can be a bit intimidating. Like as somebody just standing there. Do you mean obviously make yourself look natural, so you're not just like looking at people, but um, yeah, just be natural about it and just watch how people shop different aisles and different categories, and because they shop things differently. Do you know what I mean? Like you'll find that some categories are very brand loyal. Like for example, like Coke and Pepsi. You'll find that other brands that are going into that space, if you're making a cola product, you're going up against titans. Like, do you mean it's going to take years and years for you to break any equity in that? So people tend to be quite brand loyal. So that's a category where you would just need to really stand out against Coke or Pepsi, um, because people are very much either I drink Coke, I drink Pepsi, and that's kind of it. Um, but for example, like the skincare aisle, like if you were to watch people look at that, you'll find that men shopping skincare will just probably just pick up the first thing and put that in their basket. But women tend to kind of look at the ingredients and, is it vegan? Is it safe? Is it skin sensitive? Um, and that's goes back to the whole understanding your customer, understanding what makes them tick, and understand why they're buying a certain product. Um, but yeah, yeah, I forgot what the question was now. Was there a question?
I can't remember what the question was either, but I think you have answered it. Thank you. I like that. And I actually was thinking as you were talking that skincare, hair, like the beauty sector, I think that's definitely one where people put, I mean, I know for myself, even if I just go and buy anything, if it's something for my hair, I will go and read all the ingredients and find out what it does. And I think those categories in particular, there must be opportunities there because people, in my experience, and perhaps I'm wrong here, but I do feel like that's somewhere where you are going to be reading the packaging. You do want to know what's in it because I think
Yeah,
a lot of us now are really conscious about
yeah,
what goes like onto our bodies, or into
yeah,
our bodies. In this case of food, I think those probably are categories where there is a lot of opportunity to
yeah,
stand out by
yeah.
having
There
something
is.
interesting on the packaging.
Yeah, yeah, there is, and that's just on
And
that
what if
point that
somebody
that's kind of what happens with M&S, right? Where they've now introduced that whole is it the only ingredient range where like their cereal and their sausages and their burgers all have like the 6 ingredients or 5 ingredients or whatever the ingredients are on their front of the packaging. Because I think the younger generation now that have got more buying power, they've kind of that's kind of what they care about. That's what makes a lot of the younger generation tick with what they want to why they're buying something. They're conscious about what goes on their hair or their skin or what they're eating or whatever it might be. But yeah, yeah,
Oh, it's all just so interesting. And I've only got a few more questions, so I feel like we could talk about this for a very long time. But one thing I'd like to know,
uh,
for anyone listening who has a smaller budget, but maybe they do want to put some attention on their packaging, where should they
yeah.
focus their investment to get the biggest return, would you say?
Work with us. No, I'm joking. um, I don't. To be fair, it very much goes back to the whole like try and understand the customer the most because without that, like without knowing, it's back to the Poppy case study, isn't it? Where like they spent years in this whole we're gut health and we're health friendly, but people aren't buying fizzy drinks to be healthy. They're buying it for a good taste and a bit of a pick me up and a bit of a treat. The fact it's low sugar and the fact that it's healthy for your gut is just an added benefit and adds credibility and differentiation to the brand, but it's not the buy-in motivation of the product. And I mean, I don't know how long it took them to rebrand from like whatever it was beforehand to Poppy. Um, But if you're on a smaller budget, I would just try and understand that, like, you will have people around you in your circle that you can ask the question to. Like, if you were to buy this brand or if you were to look at this category, how would you shop it? Why would you buy it? What makes you buy it? What price point would you buy it at? Um, and then if as budgets grow, you can do that on a more tailored scale, like hosting, like, consumer workshops and, doing online consumer testing, etc. Um, so there's that side of it, definitely the customer side of it. But again, go back to the competitors, like, because I'm sure, um, if Poppy would have rebranded and they were, number 18 in that category, their product would probably look loads different. Luckily they weren't, and they were quite new to the category, and they've almost built a subcategory within fizzy drinks, where it's like that whole prebiotic, it's like hip hop and Poppy and all those sorts of brands. Um, but now, like, I look at that category and think, well, everything looks the same now because that's just the category that it is. Like, Poppy have created this new category, and brands look at the category and go, "Oh, well, Poppy are doing well. Let's just copy their creative direction." And you've got brands like Little Things, Hip Hop. They kind of all look quite similar now. So if a brand like that were to now look into that category and think we're going to launch a product in there, um, I just look at that category and go, right, how can we fit this new product in that fits in with the consumer buying motivations? Um, but yeah, you don't necessarily need a big budget to kind of know how to do it, if that makes sense. But the execution of it, that's where budgets obviously need to be bigger because it takes a bit of expertise to get to that point. But yeah.
That makes sense. Thank you. So I've got one final question before we finish up, Daniel, and that is, what is your number one piece of advice to any founders who want to create memorable packaging?
Oh, I always say be a penguin in a room full of flamingos. So we once it's a bit of a story. We had a client once that when we jumped on a call with them, they said they wanted to be the flamingo of the category that they are in. Um, I think it was actually skincare. Um, but they said, "Oh, we want to be the flamingo of the category. We want to stand out." And in my head, I was thinking, "Well, what if what if everyone's a flamingo? Like, if everyone's a flamingo?" Because they basically came to us with, like, preconceived ideas of how they wanted the brand to look and the packaging to look and their creative direction. They'd done all this market research. Um, and they were like, "We want to be the flamingo," and we were just like, "Well, everyone's a flamingo in that category. Like, the hair care categories, everyone's a flamingo, so you're not going to stand out in there." But then we kind of flipped it and said, if you were going to, if it's a room full of flamingos, be the penguin. So then the caveat to that and the lesson from that is, like, every category is different. Like, what works in one category won't work in another. So you really need to understand the category. So my biggest advice is just understand the category, understand who you're going up against, and not necessarily like, because we always do research based on, like, the benefit that the product has. So, for example, electrolytes, we look at bottles of water in that. So if we were to work the electrolyte brand, we'd look at bottles of water because essentially it's still hydration, and that's still kind of a category that it goes up against. Um, but yeah, just understand that market, understand the category, see where you can fit in, and yeah, be the penguin in the room full of flamingos.
Well, that's brilliant advice. Thank you so much. And
Fab, no
thank you so
worries.
much for everything that you've shared. So we're going to put links to where everyone can find you in the show notes for the episode. And yeah, thank you again.
Cool. Wonderful. Pleasure. Absolute pleasure.